so much for coming back to us tonight. We have a very special program for you. We're going to be introducing our new Target chair, Alexandra Vo, who is a former member of the AWG in Paris and a current member of the FAWCO Club. She's also our SDG team leader and has been very active in our environment team. And environment is definitely a passion of hers. We're really excited to have her. Alexandra?
Hello, everyone. So, hello. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday. Um, I'm just going to jump right in. I'm relatively new to FAWCO, and so I want to start by just giving you a very brief history of the target programs. And that's a way to both understand the program as well as to celebrate these tremendous projects. Then I'm going to talk to you briefly about the SDG because that is part of the application process. And next, I will explain to you what I think my role as chair is. And finally, a few quick announcements about gender and the environment of events that will be happening. Okay, then. So don't worry if I go too fast because at the very end, there will be a QR code that you can use your phone to download this presentation. So what is the target program? Well, basically, for me, it means teamwork. Um, it is centered around the four global issues: the environment, human rights, education, and health. And what we do as a team, FAWCO, the clubs, FAWCA, in partnership with the FAWCO Foundation, is that we will pick a target project around the environment and then we will raise funds for it. And this is a 3-year project. So this is a quick view of the timeline. I'm not really going to get into it because Tharien later on will explain it, but I really want to point out two things. This year, the application process will be broken down into 2 phases, and the first deadline is July 31st. So that's important to remember. So this was our very first target project around the environment. This was in 2009 to 2013, headed by Anne van Oorschot of the AWC The Hague. And we raised nearly $165,000 for Tabitha Wells for clean water in Cambodia. The next one was around human rights from 2013 to 2016, headed by Johanna de Jong of AWC The Hague. And we raised over $172,000 for Free the Girls, which is providing economic opportunity to survivors of human trafficking. Free the Girls work with former victims of sex trafficking in Africa and Latin America, helping them rebuild their lives through economic empowerment. The third one around education was Hope Beyond Displacement. This was headed by Trisha Sauer from AIWC Cologne, and we raised $190,000. This was about building better futures through education, vocational, and leadership training for refugee women and girls in Jordan. And of course, last night we celebrated the completion of number 4 around health. So that started in 2019 and wrapped up yesterday. It was led by Tharien from AWC Antwerp with help from Martha Canning from AWC Amsterdam. And we raised $176,000, which is amazing considering she basically did this all online during the pandemic. So this project was SAFE, which stands for Safe Alternative for FGM Elimination. It was a project of Hope for Girls and Women in Tanzania. If you will take note on the bottom, as in all the other slides, these are all the SDGs that this project touched on. And I just wanted to point out that all 4 target programs touch on all 17 SDGs. So that is really incredible. So now we are into target project number 5 about the environment. And this is what it's about. It is about our natural environment empowering women and girls to ensure a sustainable future. And what does that really mean? So for proposals, we are seeking applications for transformative projects that focus on our natural environment while empowering women and girls to create a sustainable future for all. These projects could tackle the loss of biodiversity, the climate crisis, or pollution waste. Some examples, but not limited to these, are the preservations of plant or animal species. So that speaks to biodiversity, mitigation of desertification or flooding, promotion of native plants or regenerative agriculture. So that speaks to the climate crisis. And reduction of waste in our atmosphere, land, and water. So that speaks to pollution waste. Also consider how a project may improve the lives of women and girls. Polluted water kills 1.8 million people annually, mostly children. Women represent 80% of these displaced by climate disaster, and 700 million people suffer from hunger. So climate justice is part of the equation. A transformative project for women and girls could improve their health and well-being, educate and introduce new skills, and in the process, reduce inequalities. The Target Project is an investment in the future of women and girls who are living in harmony with nature. And finally, I want to point out that while these projects are about women and girls, they are not exclusively about women and girls. So I see from the poll that a large percent of us in the audience know the Target Project very well, and a few somewhat, and one person not at all. So terrific. So this then is a celebration of all the Target projects that we've done. So because the application includes aspects of the SDG, I just wanted to point out the main ones dealing with the environment. So when we look at number 6, clean water and sanitation, we're talking about toilets and wells. Number 7, that's very similar to talking about solar energy or electric cars. 11, sustainable cities and sustains the community. Number 12 is a big one. That's responsible consumption and production. So that is the reduction of single-use plastic, using less coals, less production of methane gas, or just buying less of fast fashion. Oops, sorry. Number 3, climate action. So that's usually a combination of efforts. It's usually anything that slows down the warming of this planet. Number 14 and 15 really speaks to biodiversity. So when we're talking about life below water or life on land, we are basically saying that we depend on them and they depend on us. We need the fish, the bees, the insects, the giraffes, the palm trees, the native plants, and the mighty redwoods. So we need them to absorb the CO2, to be pollinators. And so it is our job to protect them. But here are some of the other SDGs to consider. Although they are not directly linked to the environment, they are just as important. Number 5, for instance, gender equality. When we talk about women and girls, we are talking about gender equality. One of the big issues is what Emily mentioned in the opening event was period poverty, menstrual product. That is a big that has a big environmental impact. And I remember that Amanda Drollinger in the environment team wrote about when she had a baby, she decided to use reusable diapers. So diapers themselves have a huge environmental impact. So I don't want to spend too much time on the SDG, but I think it's pretty obvious that if we're talking about farming and you know, protecting our resources, that will reduce poverty, that will help with hunger, that will increase the health and well-being of people. If we are talking about training people or vocational training, that's quality education. Building wells or helping with irrigation system, that is infrastructure. And if we are training women and girls, we will reduce inequality. So that's SDG 10. And I think the sum total of helping us to preserve our environment and um, allowing us to benefit from the resources here, all of that will help with peace and justice. And last but not least, partnership for the goal is really what FAWCO does when we take on these target projects. We are partnering with somebody on the ground to achieve these goals. So I now want to kind of segue over to my role as the chairperson. And I want to start with this slide because it really illustrates the problem I have, or the dilemma, let's just say, that I have as a chairperson. To start with, I want to tell you my story about the plastic solution. So last year, what happened was that the environment team had a fair, and my job was to give a presentation on the plastic problem. So these are 5 of my slides from last year from that presentation. And I'm just going to go through very quickly. What I had was the first slide, trash that are in the 4 C's, the Baltic Sea, the North Sea, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean. And I showed that there were cigarettes, bottles, plastic bottles, and plastic bags that are polluting those seas. And then my next slide was how long plastic decompose. So we have a lifespan of 1 month, and then we have some plastic bottles that will last 400 years. And then at the bottom slide, I had where plastic trash end up in the world. And next to it, what percentage of those plastic bottles that actually get recycled. And as it turned out, less than 50% of these plastic waste are recycled because most of them end up incinerated or in the landfill. And I don't want to pick on Sweden, it's just an example, but in this slide, it basically said that although Sweden is considered a very green country, they ended up incinerating 75% of their plastic waste. So the reason why I'm showing you this slide is to say that while I was writing this presentation, I started to get numb. I'm the writer, and I'm trying to telecast to my audience the importance of reducing plastic. But I myself was getting numb, so I couldn't even imagine what my audience was feeling. And that is my dilemma as a chairperson, to basically tell you the state of the environment, but the state of the environment is so terrible. So how do I do that without shutting off the audience, without you switching it off? Um, so as important as these numbers are, they are numbing and overwhelming, and they actually prevent us from acting. So I decided to switch tactic. And I've decided that the way to promote action is through storytelling. And coincidentally, 2 months ago, I saw a conference in which Melissa Fleming, who is the Undersecretary General of Global Communication at the UN, she was basically saying the same, she was basically explaining the same dilemma, that she is in charge of telling about the mass migration of refugees these enormous numbers of 18 million people, 1% of them being displaced. And the numbers were just too overwhelming. And so she introduced this psychologist or sociologist. His name is Paul Slovic, and he came up with this concept called psychic numbing. And it is basically this: the more who die, the less we care. Numbers are simply overwhelming. It seems like the larger the figures, the more people turn away. Even when we want to care, we find we switch off. So Paul Slovic has done several studies, and one of them, he put two children suffering, the story of two children suffering in front of people. So it's not a large group of people, just two children suffering. And he found that people suddenly felt a lack of agency, like they couldn't do anything. The idea of two children dying of hunger was too overwhelming for most people. Luckily, he found that the flip side of this, the flip side to inaction, to promote action, is that if we can just relate to one single human story, then that story has the power to motivate us to act. So here's another example: 1.8 million. I don't know if you remember this figure. I quoted it earlier in my presentation about the environment. 1.8 million was a number from 2015. That is the number of deaths caused by water pollution. And most of those deaths are children. And to give you some context, 70% of the world is covered by water. And of that 70%, 2.5% is fresh water. And of that, only 1% is accessible to us to use. But let's be honest, as much as we care about the environment, we can't relate. We switch off. Perhaps by the end of this presentation, we won't even remember this number. So Miss Fleming has this other quote: "Statistics are human beings with tears dried off." Again, the numbers are overwhelming and numbing. 2 years ago, this month in March, was the start of the pandemic. And I remember in New York, we heard about one case of somebody who got COVID. And then we heard of 4, and then we heard of 10, and then 100. And pretty soon we were all in a panic about COVID. Well, now it's been 2 years later, and it's 5.9 million deaths in the world. But I think because we've lived with it for so long and the numbers are so large, that number is rather numbing, isn't it? So what can we do about this? So we have to go back to the human story. And this is a picture of people in the Tabitha Wells Project in Cambodia. And so I'm bringing this picture up again because it illustrates what the Target program does. It tells her story. It tells the human story. It tells what can be done and how it can be done. Is it vocational training? Is it building infrastructure? Is it about empowerment and leadership? Jane Goodall wrote that book, The Book of Hope, which is the global book read. And that really is just a book of her stories, of her personal stories about her life in the jungle. And by telling her personal story and her story, she is giving us hope again when so many times we just feel so hopeless. And so I feel like that is my job as chair, is to be a mini Jane Goodall and to tell you the story of the Target Project. Roby in the Target 4 project is another great example of us telling her story. So this is the question for our next Target project. This is what I hope the proposals will start. The beginnings of stories, of conversations, of discovery. But whichever we select, ultimately, it will be a story of dignity, which was exemplified in all of the Target projects. There is no shame, no judgment, just respect and compassion and empathy, and understanding that we will be learning about her culture as much as we are helping. I hope we receive a lot of exciting and energizing stories, which unfortunately will involve big numbers, but we'll have a story to tell. The selected project will be her story, and it, like the 4 previous projects, will be our story too. So once we select a project, it will be my honor to be the chief storyteller. The first year will be about awareness. The following 2 years will be about the selected project. I will be telling stories of the FAWCO, the club of FAWCO, clubs, FAWCO, and the foundation teamwork centered around the environment. I will be telling her story, which is the target project, where I hope we will be learning as much as we will be helping. And where can you read these stories? Well, I will be posting my blogs and bulletin on FAWCO.org. You just have to go to the main page and click on the quick links and click on Target Program Environments. And that's where I will be posting my blogs and bulletin. So before I wrap up, I just want to make some very quick announcements. A lot of things are happening. So primarily, the UN is hosting the CSW 66 this March, the 14th to the 25th. There will be a parallel event, which is the NGO CSW. And luckily, we have Lori Richardson, who is our UN liaison, who will be holding a training session this Monday. You can contact her at unliaison@falco.org, or you can go to the falco.org homepage and click on UN Advocacy. And then on March 8th, we will be celebrating International Women's Day. And the theme is gender equality for a sustainable tomorrow. Jane Goodall will be one of the keynote speakers. And you can see there that there is a list of some pretty amazing speakers. So it's not just her, there are just amazing speakers as well. So I put here where you can register for that. And then you can also go to the actual observance of Women's Day webpage and learn more about the vocabulary of gender equality and climate change. And then on May 7th, the environment team will be hosting a one-day environment festival. And that's where you can learn what it means, biodiversity, pollution waste, and climate change. There will be a panel for those interested in applying for the TP5 project. There will be somebody from the member of the selection committee to answer your question. And you can email environment@falco.org to ask to get more information. And I want to give a quick shout out to the people and organization that incredibly are already supporting Target Project 5. And here I am just launching it, and already I have this amazing network. If you see there, Tharien and Nancy had written a book, written and illustrated the book, What is a Perfect World? It had supported Target Project 4, and now all the proceeds will go to Target Project 5. FAWCO is holding its annual Luna Fest fundraising. I went to it, I saw it for the first time last year, and it was incredible. So I hope you will support Target Project 5 and Luna Fest by going to FAWCO.org to check it out. And of course, if you are part of a club and you're looking for a fundraising idea, well, look no further than going to the FAWCOfoundation.org page, click on the Programs tab, select target project, and there is just a slew of ideas on how you can fundraise with your club. So this is my final slide. As you can see there is the QR code where you can scan to get this presentation. But I do want to mention that Linda Perry is my partner in this. She is the fundraising coordinator from AIWC Düsseldorf. And if you want to contact me, I am at Target5-Environment at FAWCO.org. But just remember, if you have questions about the application process, you will have to contact Tharien. And she will be coming up after me to answer your questions and to present the selection process. But before I go, I want to say one last personal note. I want to say that I am really humbled by this position because I'm stepping into incredibly big shoes, as you've seen with the previous Target programs. And on the other hand, I will be communicating to an incredibly smart audience, you all. So let me end by thanking first Tharien, who has basically shepherded me through up to this process and will be helping me out in the future. She has been really, really amazing. And I want to thank the past Target project chairs because I've spoken to several of them and they've been incredibly helpful. I also want to mention that the foundation, of course, will be my partner in all of this. And I know that Emily, Nancy Dobrian, and Anne-Marie Morrow and Sally Chevalier will keep me straight and keep me on my deadlines. I want to thank Lori Richardson, who pretty much started my journey with FAWCO and who taught me so much about the UN. And of course, I will be relying not only on the SDG team to help me with this, but the environment, the health, the human rights team, and the education teams. And I am sure that in the next 3 years, they will be able to help me, again, tell her story. So thank you very much. I hope to see you in person in part 2 of the IM.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. I just wanted to emphasize that point you made about Lori, who started you on this journey. And many of you in FAWCO often speak to your organizations or write articles, and you may think that no one's listening. Sometimes people are listening, and you never know when someone that you were talking to is going to take what you said and then turn it into something fabulous. So I'm really excited that Alexandra had gone on that journey, and I'm glad that she's going to be leading this project for us. So at this point, I will say goodbye to Alexandra, and we'd like to welcome to the stage Tharien von Eck. She's a very familiar face to all of you because she's been our Target chair for the last 3 years, and she has done a remarkable job, but she is also probably the person who knows most about Target at this point in time. We do have a lot of past Target chairs that know a lot of information, so it's great that we have a program where our current leaders have a chance to consult our past leaders to find out what has worked and what hasn't worked. So Tharien, I'd like to bring you to the stage and take it away.
Thank you very much, Emily. Can you please bring the slides up? Thank you. So what I'm going to do is to take you through the application and selection process for Target 5. Emily, thank you very much for asking me to lead this. It's a very exciting period or time in the Target project or Target program duration. So I'm looking forward to work with all of you. Next slide. This is just a recap of what Alexandra mentioned in her slide. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but included it in this slide so that you can have it as reference. Next slide. I would like to introduce you to the TP5 selection committee. We have a very I think an amazing group of women representing a wide variety of clubs across the FAWCO community. I'm very excited to be able to work with all of these ladies over the next year. Next slide. This is a really important slide, and as Alexandra already mentioned, there are a few dates that if you're interested in submitting a target project, that you need to be very mindful of. And I'm just going to go through some of these high or important dates from the site. So on Monday, the 7th, the information pack will be available on the new environmental or environment landing page. This is the starting point of the journey to apply for or to submit an application. You will find all the information that you need. It's a lengthy document, but crucial to go through this. On July the 31st, the applications for phase 1 must be submitted, and the time for this to be submitted will be midnight, your time zone. On November the 3rd, the phase 2 applications or the phase 2 of the application process must be submitted. On January the 9th, the shortlist will be announced, and that will be 3 projects, and those 3 projects will be shared with the FAWCO community, and you will have the opportunity to vote on the project that you believe should become the next target project for the duration or during the duration of February 1 to 15. During March, the new target project will be announced, and then the fundraising will kick off in an accelerated gear. Next slide. So what is new in the application process? There was an extensive review done upon the completion of the application selection process in TP4, and the recommendation was made that we should go to a 2-phased approach, and this is what we are doing. I've already mentioned the due dates for the submission of the information. Another recommendation was, well, actually 2 other recommendations were that we should have more focus on the sustainability and the accountability of the projects. And I will talk a little bit more about this later in this deck. And we also should move to standardized templates, which the application, which your organizations need to complete, because this will just make the whole selection process that much easier. And finally, on this slide, we will use Google Drive extensively in this selection process. So if you're not sure on how to use Google Drive, please contact me and I can provide you with more information on that. Next slide. Phase 1. This will include the project summary, details and overview of the organization that you would like to nominate as a possible next target project. And then we've included in this phase also 3 protection policies. And I will talk a little bit more about what a protection policy is in a later slide. So the 3 policies that we will require will be a policy on how you manage working with children and vulnerable persons, if applicable, how you manage to, or how the organization works with volunteers, and how images, photos, video clips, etc. are being managed. If an organization does not have any of these policies, there will be references to organizations where good information can be found to help you to develop policies. If the policies are only available in a local language, then we will make available the possibility that you can provide a short summary in English about what the policy address. So there's lots of support with this section if the organization does not have all of this in place. Furthermore, in phase 1, we will ask for a detailed overview of the project. So what does it entail, who it will reach out to, etc. And then we also ask the project budget and funding in this phase. And there's very clear reasoning as to why all of these aspects are asked in the phases that they are being asked. Next slide. In phase 2, we will be asking more about the representatives of the organization that you will be nominating. We will be asking additional questions in the overview of the organization. And then we are going to ask for a number of templates to be completed, a number of important documents. So the first one is a simple logic model, project timeline, risk assessment. We also will ask about or provide a minimum financial standards score sheet. And then we will ask for a meal plan, which stands for monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. And there will be, as I mentioned, templates provided for all of these 5 aspects that we will be asking. If it does sound Greek to you, it took me a while to become familiar with all of these suggestions. But it does make so much sense because it will provide us with a much better understanding about the sustainability and accountability of the organizations. And there will be much more information provided on what should be in these specific documents when we do trainings later during March. And then finally, in phase 2, we will be asking how the organization plan to support the FAWCO community with fundraising, awareness raising, and promotion of the organization. Next slide. I mentioned already the information packets. This is the document that will be your departure points. And this is, as I said, the document that will be available on the landing page of the environment website as from Monday. This is a lengthy document. I really strongly recommend that you take time and read through this information packet more than once so that you understand exactly what the requirements will be. The information packets have a number of different topics to it. So the first will be the description of the focus of TP5, basically what Alexandra mentioned in her first slide or first few slides. There will be a high-level introduction to FAWCO, the FAWCO Foundation, as well as the Target program. For those of you that's not completely familiar with what the Target program is all about, there will be a very clear explanation about what this is in the document. There then will be a sample of the application packet. So this will be all the questions and all the requirements. Then there will be information about all the instructions about how you have to complete or submit the application process. We have put the phase 1 and phase 2 application questions in this document. I skipped one, the guidelines and the selection criteria, very important. This is really something that you need to go through in detail. And when you finish reading this, sit back for a moment to determine whether your project will be suitable to be submitted for a TP5 for the TP5 selection. So take time to look through the selection criteria. And then finally, there will be a signature page, which is very important. And this is part of the phase 1 application, a statement of agreement. This is where the foundation comes in, and this is the agreement that eventually will be developed with the new organization that will come, the TP5 Target project. And then right at the bottom of this document will be a link to a Google form. If you're interested and you feel that your or the organization that you are supporting will be an appropriate project for TP5, then you will complete this Google form, and upon completion, you will then get access to a target folder. And I will explain how that will be done. Next slide. So as I already mentioned, the target program landing page will be available or will go live on Monday. The timeline information packet will be there. As I mentioned, upon completion of the Google form, there will be a project folder, which will be dedicated to your potential application. It's possible to work offline, and then for you to upload all the information a few days before the closing date. And I want to emphasize that no late information, submission of information will be allowed. So July the 31st, midnight your time, all the information needs to be uploaded. And for this reason, I would really strongly recommend that you upload the information a few days before the due date. Next slide. This is just an overview of what you will find in the phase 1 folder. There will be a welcome email from me. There's a block, could my project be the target project for the environment? This block will also become available on Monday when the Target5 webpage will go live. There will be a document providing you with more information on how to work in Google Drive. The timeline will be there, frequently asked questions, etc. So what we've done here is to really to break down the information that's in the information packet into bite-sized documents in the phase 1 folder. Next slide. Next slide. Thanks, Emily. So what's the meaning of protection policies? These are policies addressing matters related to how the organization works with beneficiaries and volunteers. So children, vulnerable people, etc. And as I mentioned, if the organization does not have one of these policies in place, we have provided really good guidance on how to develop these policies. Next slide. So to make it easier for you, we've also developed a flyer, which is the first marketing and awareness flyer that you can use. This flyer can be made available at club level. You can share it with your members. If it's very easy, you just scan it, and the document will appear on your phone or on your iPad. And then there's, next slide. There's a second QR code, and this is for this deck that I've gone through tonight. So everything that I've said, you can find easily back, and you can refer to that. And then finally, the last slide. I will do 2 awareness trainings on March the 16th. The first one will be at 12 p.m. Central European Time, and the next one will be at 7 p.m. Central European Time. And during these sessions, I'll provide much more information on how you need to do the application process. We're not going to go through all of the detail tonight. I also would like to mention to you that on the 10th of March, both Alexandra and I will join a meeting that Kanika Holloway is hosting, and that's for the reps and the regional coordinators, presidents. I'm not sure now if it's for all of them, but in any case, during that meeting, we will also provide information. But in the interim, if you have any questions about the application and the selection process, please send an email to me and I will provide you with additional information. But I'm really looking forward to seeing the applications that will come in. You have so much to choose from. It's such a wide field that can be submitted. If you're not sure where the project could work, please contact me and we can have a discussion about that. Yes, very exciting period that's waiting for us. And we will provide feedback on a regular basis as to how this is proceeding. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Tharien. I just also want to say that going through this process is not only good for submitting an application to FAWCO, but it also prepares an organization to submit for other grant applications. Yeah. And it really, some of the people that have applied to FAWCO target projects in the past have turned around and used the information for other applications and won other grants. So this can be a real step forward for an organization that you support, and I hope you'll consider submitting for the target project, which probably has the best odds out of any granting organization going. So thank you, Tharien. Alexandra, I'll ask you, is there anything else that you'd like to say, or shall we end up now?
Are there any questions from the audience?
We've had some people who've had trouble with the QR codes, but these the slides that were presented tonight will be turned into a Target 5 Expo booth tonight. Mm-hmm. So you'll be able to access that tonight and tomorrow to get the slides, and you will also be able to get all of the information as of Monday on the FAWCO website.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
And Maggie has a question somewhere. Will the awareness training sessions be recorded and made available to those of us who will not be available on March 16th?
Yes, we certainly can do that. Maggie, yeah, that I will be working with Anne-Marie. So I believe we can do that.
It should be no problem to record something like that.
Yeah.
And we will try to have all of this. This session itself is being recorded and will also be available for people who need it. Okay, thank you very much, Tharien and Alexandra. I'll take you off now and give a little bit more information. This session is going to end, and we will be able to adjourn again to the networking area of the Hop-In site. Again, if you click on the left button, networking, you'll have a prompt say, "Are you ready?" And you click the button and it will connect you with another FAWCO member who is standing by to network with you. And this is a great chance to be connected with a random person as if you were meeting them in the hallway. Sometimes you get connected with people you've already met, and sometimes you meet someone new. It's been something that's been very popular for people who've done it so far. So I hope you do it if you haven't already. If you come back to the stage at 8:30 p.m., that's when we're going to be joined by the FAWCO Foundation Board. They're going to be giving you all sorts of information about previous recipients of educational awards and development grants. And it's going to be a great presentation to learn a little bit more about where your money has gone all of these years. So I hope you will come back and join us at 8:30. And thank you very much for coming tonight. So see you later.